Welcome back, everybody, to the Marketing Essentials. I'm your host today, Costa Trandafilu. We're honored and ecstatic to be joined again by David Gruehn, Global Industry Principal for Grocery at SAP Customer Experience. David, first and foremost, I want to say, how's everything faring for you down in Texas, given everything that happened last week? Is everyone safe?
Thanks, Costa. Safe. We got power and I'm warm and I'm not hungry. That's the big difference from this time last week.
Well, last time we were talking last year, you were telling me how hot it was in Texas, and all of a sudden there's a massive temperature shift in the last couple of weeks, and we're praying for everybody in Texas and hoping that everyone's doing okay. We had a fantastic conversation last year. Obviously, grocery is a burning topic for everybody. Last year, 2020, an increase in almost 40% in online sales for grocers. That's a massive shift. Something's obviously happened. But we're starting to see that maybe not everybody's on board yet with this storm that's been brewing. To start off, I kind of wanted to talk to you about this perfect storm that we do see brewing currently in grocery, and what are these components that are coming up to make this?
Yeah, there is a perfect storm brewing here, and I mean, there's really three fronts if you want to keep the weather theme here. There's three fronts that are converging that are creating this perfect storm, and one of them clearly was driven last year by the pandemic. But well, real quick, the fronts are a rapidly expanding base of digitally mature and now a growing number of digitally native customers in retail that are consuming and assimilating emerging technologies pretty much faster than we've ever seen. And it's that's not necessarily new. The difference is, like I said, you've got a lot more digitally native customers that are part of this mix now. And you've got an expanding base driven by the second front of digitally immature customers that likely never would have shopped online, especially for groceries, and now they are. So that was the first front. The second front is that online grocery reached a tipping point in 2020. I mean, clearly we saw a lot of customers, many of whom likely would never have been digital grocery shoppers, were forced to shop online, and it changed their grocery shopping expectations significantly. So you're right. We saw spikes of 50, 60% online grocery market share. That's come down to levels that we would have predicted would have happened at some point. So there was a stickiness, but that has changed the mix. So you've got this online grocery market share penetration that has just exploded, driven primarily by that pandemic. And then thirdly, the front, when those two things hit, basically the moist air coming over the Gulf, this is where we reach this amazingly powerful precipice in retail, especially for grocery, where emerging technologies are passing from the R&D to the you and me and have the potential to blow the doors off of everything that we thought we knew about customer experience. So some quick examples: beacons, proximity sensors, edge computing, and IoT. That's this real-time infrastructure that's now possible, that's going to grease the skids for what we're predicting are going to be crucial things like immersive adaptive experiences and contextual personal promotions. 5G is going to be the conduit for that. You got cognitive computing, AI and ML, that's going to play an excellent role in assistants and virtual advisors. You've got machine learning and face recognition that will start to sense your mood and give you contextual, real-time help based on what it senses you're going through. Blended reality clearly with virtual and augmented reality. Sensor fusion and customer data platforms that will combine not just the information on customers that grocers have, but all the information that these digitally expanding customers are just spewing into this digital realm across so many channels: Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook. I mean, all that stuff needs to come together, and now retailers have access to it. And then the real-time edge analytics, the camera and video analytics, all these things are going to provide this explosive opportunity to build a relationship with the customer like we've never seen before. So the end game here is that this potential to build and harness real-time, hyper-personalized relationships with customers through immersive, predictive, and adaptive customer experiences. The end game is creating that loyal and valuable customer for life. I think the question retailers need to ask themselves is, with this perfect storm, are they going to hunker down into survival mode, or are they going to become storm chasers?
That leads me to, I think, a perfect question, right? So I'm not sure if everybody here listening or watching knows, but when a cold front hits a hot front, you typically get a cyclone, you get a hurricane, you get a massive storm. And when that happens, or a tornado, right? Or when that happens,
force of nature.
People start to adapt. People start to board up their windows. Maybe people will move inland if there's a hurricane coming close to the coast. It's a similar situation here for grocers, right? Grocers have to adapt to this perfect storm. They need to start boarding up their windows. They need to start figuring out what they're going to do. Why is it so important that they do this in 2021?
Well, you bring up a great point. You and I both live in Tornado Alley. I mean, first time I ever experienced a tornado. Hurricane, I've heard people say with hurricanes, I weathered it, I'll never do that again. With tornadoes, if you play chicken with a tornado, the thing you'll hear is nothing because they weathered it and didn't survive. Here's the thing about retail that I love. I've been in retail almost 30 years, and the only thing that's been consistent during that time is the volatility and certainty of change. So you become addicted to change, and you harness it or you don't survive. That's really kind of where we are. So, grocery, interestingly enough, was one of the last retail segments to embrace this digital channel. They clearly were pulling up the rear there. I called it dodging their digital destiny. So going into 2020, we knew the change was imminent. The experts were predicting that online grocery would grow from its current state of about 2 to 3% to a more respectable 20 to 25% by 2025-ish, right? And so it's been a conundrum for grocers because it was easy for them to kind of delay this shift because at 2 to 3%, online grocery transactions aren't profitable, right? They were losing money in every transaction. A 25% online share made the necessary adjustments easier to discuss and justify with senior executives. And so I began to see an uptick in discussions and interest in digital transformation from grocers, albeit begrudgingly, as we enter 2020. The pandemic, though, changed everything. Grocers thought they had 5 or 6 years to ease into this digital world, and they genuinely sought, I think, to be omni-channel retailers. But we passed the 2020 double-digit grocery target of 25% in March of 2020. So I've heard it said that grocers, pretty much all retailers, but most certainly grocers, COVID-19 shrunk 10 years of transformational and technological growth into 1 year, basically. The other element to consider here is the impact that 2020 had on the shopper, the grocery shopper, which was significant. As we mentioned, digitally mature native grocery shoppers, just because they're digitally mature doesn't mean they were shopping for groceries online, but many did for the first time, and they liked it. That's pretty cool. I was going to get there eventually. And at a minimum, it helped them see for the first time their rapidly expanding options. Great for them, not so great for the grocers. More importantly, the large numbers of digitally immature shoppers, these 55 plus demographic, who likely never would have shopped online. And I mean, I include some people like my brother who's 45. He was poo-pooing online. Never will happen. Guess what? They all went online because they were forced to. So we've got these customers, and a lot of them comprise the bulk of most grocers, especially regional grocers. That's their loyalty base, the people who they live in the store. And much of that loyalty is driven by customer in-store experiences. It makes sense, right? These customers have expanded their paradigms now, however. They see that they've got more options. They may not, go 50%, but even if they're going 20%, that's an exposure point for grocers to their loyalty programs. And so I'm encouraging grocers to reassess and then to seek and protect these relationships, especially if it's a key component of their differentiation strategies. And then finally, we don't have the time to really go into this in any depth because it's outside the scope of this discussion, but the impact of these fulfillment intermediaries or Instacarts is huge on the shopper, huge on the in-store experience, and huge to the grocer. I mean, Instacart hired 300,000 people in their fleet to try and keep up with demand for online grocery shopping. And so suffice it to say, and this is a whole nother webinar, but suffice it to say that Instacart would like nothing more than to reduce every grocer to their online fulfillment center network. I mean, that's their goal. So yeah, so tremendous amount of change in 2020. And again, are you going to take advantage of it and become a storm chaser, or are you going to hunker down and just try and survive? It's hard to survive in it with a tornado.
It's very impossible to survive. I mean, if you're in the middle of the tornado, good luck is what I'm going to say to most individuals that are stuck in it, because they definitely are a force to reckon with. A power that, if you've never seen a tornado in real life, they truly can wreak havoc on anything.
And they're unpredictable. And again, that's why this is this perfect storm. It's unpredictable, and you can't ignore it. But, there are, even in tornadoes, there's opportunities. I mean, as strange as it sounds, I've seen things improve after tornadoes. But most certainly, you don't want to ignore them and just assume they're not going to impact you.
Mm-hmm. So let's take a look at a real life example. I myself just last year made my first online order with Instacart. An example, or a brand that you just mentioned yourself. It had its pros and cons. Some things went well. Some things didn't go very well. It was a new experience for me. It was fairly simple to make the order, but I didn't receive half the things that I had actually gone ahead and requested, or they made recommendations of other products that were not even remotely related to what I was purchasing. Now, that wasn't necessarily an issue from Instacart. That was probably more the person that was doing the shopping. But there's a lot of things that have changed. There's a lot of technology involvement and pieces that are needed to kind of deliver this. You made some fantastic examples earlier around AI, CDPs, leveraging customer data. What are these core elements, though, that grocers really need in this mix to survive, get through this perfect storm into 2021 and build those deep customer relationships?
Well, I think you brought up an excellent point. I mean, if nothing else, this massive forced push into online grocery shopping put an electron microscope on every grocer's digital strategy in their digital infrastructure. And so even if you thought you had things under control, you found out where the warts and the issues were. Unfortunately, a lot of grocers realized, holy moly, we can't dodge I can't play chicken with this digital destiny. I've got to really hunker down and figure out, how to become a digitally mature grocer. And so I think that probably the number one thing that I would encourage grocers to do in terms of trying to begin to embrace this perfect storm is to acknowledge that digital transformation is no longer optional for success. It's a requirement for survival. I mean, you've really got to take this seriously. And if the pandemic didn't help you see just how critical that channel is, and more importantly, how it should have given everybody at least an initial glimpse of how intertwined the experience is across multiple channels. Here's where the smart retailers and the ones that I think have already been down this path and they couldn't see this coming, but they saw this explosion into online coming at some point. They realized that it's critical to have an experience that can begin or end in either online or in a store or on a phone. And so they're beginning to embrace omni-channel retailing and that customer experience, customer-centric focus. So that's really the second thing, is to assess your digital and customer experience maturity, and aspire to become customer experience focused as a grocer, towards becoming omni-channel, or some people would now call it unified commerce, on the journey toward becoming a customer adaptive retailer. You'll notice in the beginning I talked about this perfect storm, and that infrastructure, all those emerging technologies will give grocers the ability to begin to predict in almost a contextual real time what their customers need, because the data's there. They've built trust, and we'll get to that in a second. They built this trust and they've got the data, and so now they can kind of predict and analyze what customers may need that they don't even know. And they're beginning to build value-added experiences instead of just a positive experience, a value-added experience. I mean, think about grocery. Think about what you buy in a grocery store. I honestly believe, I'm speaking for me, but I mean, you want to create a value-for-life customer with Dave Gruehn? Protect me from myself in a grocery store. Literally, but you know what? Put that back for reasons that we're going to try and not freak you out. We're going to show you why. Why don't you get these things, right? And they figured out the right way to do that. I'm like, wow, that was helpful for me. So it's that journey toward becoming customer adaptive. They need to acknowledge that the customer experience maturity, though, is a 50-50 equation. Okay, it's 50% customer-centric culture and a 50% digital transformation, which is the technology part. One without the other is not going to work. So these first steps, solidify your digital channel and in-store fulfillment. I think that's what most grocers now are doing. But begin evaluating your strategies for building that trust. Why is trust critical? Because if you want to build or create a personalized experience, that's where omni-channel is going. It's personalized experiences. You can't just create a group of customers all the same anymore. Customers are going to expect that you know me and you're going to treat me the way I want to be treated. And that's going to require us establishing a relationship, and relationships are built on trust, right? So begin to figure out how you weave that into your digital transformation strategy. And then you can't forget about the fact that the back end's still critical, right? There's got a lot of grocers with a lot of legacy. I mean, the COBOL guys are retiring or they're gone. So we got to get this ball rolling towards the digital future, because the back end functions, you talk about some of your disappointments in online shopping. Part of that's being driven by the fact that they didn't really know what they had in the store. They wanted to sell you everything you wanted. You wanted everything you ordered. They didn't know they had it. So when the fulfillment guys go into the store, they're like, we don't have this, right? So realize that, I call it, you want me to give you the sexiest online experience possible, but which is like putting the 4-ton jacuzzi on the second floor of the house. But have you seen the cracks in this foundation? Because if you don't know where your inventory is, you're creating customer experience disaster. So we got to keep that in mind in the big picture. It's a big picture. Don't get myopically focused on the channel called digital, right? It's about the whole experience. And then finally, find some help, right? Customer experience is in maturity. It's not a solution. It's not a combination of solutions. It's a journey, right? You need to surround yourselves with partners, and trusted partners that not only understand this journey, but they're helping to define it, because it's still being defined, and it will continue to be defined because it's changing that quickly. It's like, where's that tornado going? I got Doppler, but so you're going to need some help. These partners literally are woven into your culture to where they become part of, or an extension of your company, basically. And part of their value add is they're helping to define what's happening here, so that you can focus as a grocer on how do I differentiate my customer experiences and leverage the infrastructure that this partner is helping me to build in a digitally rich environment. How do I leverage that but not have to worry about maintaining it or figuring out what's coming next, what's the next hot buzz thing I got to plug in? I want to focus on how I harness it when I need to harness it to differentiate myself by becoming a customer adaptive retailer that's predicting and creating value add experiences for their customers.
Mm-hmm. David, some fantastic points. And we're unfortunately out of time for today's episode, but we do want you back so that we can actually deep dive into everything that you were just talking about. And you definitely got me thinking about my trips to the grocery store. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest in saying that I always go to the chocolate and chip aisle first. I'm sure some others definitely go to the produce section.
Virtual agent.
Once again, everyone, David Gruehn, Global Industry Principal for Grocery at SAP Customer Experience. Again, David, thank you for joining us today.
It was a blast. Thanks.
Everyone, thank you for joining us. Stay tuned for March 11th as we bring in a special guest host, Christelle Delaporte, Head of Product Marketing for Emersys, as she interviews Melissa Sargent, CMO at Litmus. It's going to be a fantastic episode as we dive into the email personalization mix. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks.